Here's what matters. One person can start a change, but change never travels alone. Arin learned that the hard way. He woke the next morning with dust still in his hair and the taste of the night's tremor on his tongue. The bridge was gone. The valley lay in two stubborn halves. But the whisper he had heard beneath the soil did not leave him. It became a map in his head, places where the ground felt cool, places where a faint breath rose after you pressed a palm to the earth. First, he went to the blacksmith. Arin had always been loud in the mornings, smacking iron into shape. Now he sat in his doorway, the forge cold, hands folded like a man keeping a secret. Arin sat beside him. He didn't ask for help. He showed Arin where the river once curved, pointed to the cracked bed, and put his hand on the hard earth. Arin listened. For the first time in weeks, he let a slow breath out. "You heard it too," he said. Not a question, a fact. Arin stood. He picked up a hammer. Not for swords this time, for a plan. They started small. 2 men with shovels. A roof mended. A path cleared. It was nothing, only a handful of feet of earth turned over each day. But it was a beginning. People watched from windows. Some scoffed. Some leaned closer. Arin had learned to speak in small truths. Big speeches belonged to people who wanted applause. He wanted to work, so he knocked on doors. He carried water to a sick girl. He repaired a sickle for an old woman who had once tied bread to his wrist with a ribbon. He did the kind of things that remind people of themselves. Still, the valley had hard edges. Arin would see a dozen men working and call them traitors. Let them dig in the south, he'd say. Their hands built the mills. Let them take the first share. His words were knives wrapped in starch. They cut deep because they were familiar. Arin tried the northern leaders. He offered them the smallest of exchanges, grain for timber, a rooster for a bucket. He offered practical trades, things that made sense even to men who carried pride like armor. Some accepted, most refused. Then he found Mira. Mira served bread at the market, hands dusted with flour, eyes quick like someone who watches life's edges. She had watched Arin since the tremors, seen him talk to stones and listen to winds. She laughed at him the first time he asked for her help. Then she watched him help a boy whose ankle had twisted while chasing a goat. She watched him carry the boy home. Mira saw the way the boy's mother's shoulders loosened. That loosened something in Mira. People follow results, she told Arin, not promises. She handed him an extra loaf. Start a place where results show up every day. People will come. So they built a bench under the old plane tree. Not grand, just a bench. Then a pile of tools. Then a pot on a small fire. They made a place that did not belong to the north or south, but to anyone hungry enough to sit and use the tools. A woman from the north came first. She brought a broken clay pot. She would not meet Arin's eyes. She sat, mended the pot with a clumsy thread of clay, and left as if nothing had happened. 2 days later, a man from the south arrived with a bent plow. He'd been the one to shout at Arin the night the bridge fell. He stayed for 3 hours. He left with the plow fixed and his face different, smaller, as if something had taken away the weight of his own anger. These were small scenes, almost invisible, but they add up. In the valley, small things begin to look like a story. Not everyone liked this quiet defiance. Arin sent his son to break the bench. The boy smashed the wood and laughed. Arin found the bench in pieces at dawn. He could have burned his hands on that day. He could have screamed and rallied. Instead, he set the wood in the sun, swept, and began again. People started to come and bring their own broken things, not from defiance, but because the bench was a neutral place where hands could meet without old words standing between them. When 2 men argued about water rights one afternoon, it was a child who ran through their feet, stealing a ribbon and making both men chase. They laughed at the chase and did not notice they had stopped shouting. Here's the part that matters next. Trust does not return speeches. It returns in repeated evidence that someone else will show up. Arin understood this. So he showed up. Every day, at dawn and dusk. He mended, carried, listened, and pretended that every small act was an offer extended across the cracked valley. But tension does not die quietly. One afternoon, clouds gathered that smelled of iron. The sky grew heavy. The dry riverbed sent up dust like a warning. The work slowed. Men hugged their tools and looked toward the mountain as if it might finally decide whether to destroy them or to keep its peace. A loud break cut through the air. Farther up, a band of earth let go. Stones tumbled like old teeth. A scar opened along the mountain's flank and poured down a line of grit and mud. From both sides, people ran toward the ravine. Their differences fell away when they saw the shape of danger. A shepherd shouted for ropes. A woman with a basket of eggs dropped the basket and grabbed a child slipping on the mud. For a moment, the world was exact. Someone needed help, and help arrived. They pulled a man from under a slab of wood. He coughed and spat red. He was a quiet man from the south, the same who had once blamed the North for using too much water. A Northman, Leo, pulled him free, bleeding fingers clasped in someone else's wrist as if they were braided. Everyone stopped breathing for a full minute. Then they started moving again, bailing, carrying, shouting for medicine. Arin stood at the edge and watched. His heart felt like a drum. He had hoped that this moment would be the beginning of something. And for a few hours it was. Men who had not spoken in months shouted for ropes and formed lines that crossed the old fault like stitches. But when the immediate danger passed, the valley split again. Old words returned like winter. People divided the rescued food and argued about credit. Leo and the pulled man exchanged a terse nod, but it didn't last into the next day. Arin realized something vital that evening. Danger had shown them their common weakness and common strength, yes. But when fear passed, the mind chose old stories over new possibilities. Unity, he learned, can be a bright flame that extinguishes unless someone tends it. So he chose to tend it. He called for a night watch at the bench. Not a meeting, no speeches, just a watch. If we take turns, he said simply, we keep watch for the whole valley. We share the duty. We share whatever comes. No leader came. No vanir. But a few hands rose. Mira did. Orange did. A young woman from the north, whose son Arin had once fixed a toy for her, stood and said, I'll sit tonight. They sat, hour by hour, watching the silhouette of the mountain. Sometimes they said nothing. Sometimes they shared stories about what the valley used to be, how summers had smelled of hay, and how old Arin used to sing when the forge was hot. In the dark, those stories softened the edges of hurt. Night watch was small. It was fragile, but it proved a point. There were people who wanted to be trusted and to trust in return. And then came a new threat, one that would not allow small beginnings. The river's whisper that Arin had felt at the start grew into a new sound, heard by many now. Not a murmur under the earth, but a hollow tone rising from the deep like someone calling from below. It was a sound that pulled at the memory of the valley's first days, a sound that promised either salvation or ruin. By morning, smoke rose on the horizon, not from fires, but from a different place. Clouds rolling low, and the riverbed starting to steam as if something beneath had heated it. People gathered at the bridgeless gap and felt a new cold and a new danger. They looked to each other. The bench, the repaired plow, the mended pot, those were small comforts. They had not fixed the valley yet. But there was a different thing now, a choice. Would they stand divided when the mountain decided? Or would they finally test whether a handful of mended hands could turn into a tide? Arin placed his palm on the earth where the whisper had first been loudest. He felt the tremor under his palm and heard the valley's breath, faint, urgent, waiting. He stood and turned to the people gathered. He did not shout. He did not promise. He said only, we have one chance to dig where the ground calls. We will need shovels, ropes, and hands. If you come to the valley. If not, I will go. There was a silence that held like glass. Then a tool scraped stone somewhere in the crowd. Someone stepped forward. Then another. A child brought 2 small wooden scoopers. Mira lifted her head and met Arin's eyes. This is where part 2 ends, on the edge of a decision. They will dig together or they will not. They will choose to risk what they have left or to keep holding on to what has failed them. The heart of the valley was asking for a test. The valley's people were about to decide whether they were ready to answer.